Kenosha County. As many of you know, and we can't really understate or overstate our great discontent at Paul Ryan and the extreme stark vision for America that he's put forward in his budget. I know most of you are familiar with that, the end of Medicare as we know it, huge tax cuts for the wealthy, a continuation of trade and manufacturing policies that will continue to drive our economy down. But we have been looking, I think, for a long time for someone who's ready to step up, challenge him head to head, and who could bring the business experience and the community experience and the personality to get it done. And I think we found that in this candidate. It's a year and a half before the next election, but he's already declared, he's already raising money, he's already working hard every day to gain support. And so it's my pleasure, I won't tell you too much of his story so he can tell you himself, it's my pleasure to introduce the next congressman from Wisconsin's 1st District, County Supervisor from Kenosha, Rob Zerban.
Thanks for such a warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, and I've never had such a warm reception as when I tell people that I'm actually going to be challenging Paul Ryan. I don't know how many of you actually are here that are on Medicare. Can I see a show of hands? Okay, how many people here are under the age of 55 and hope to actually participate in Medicare? So more people that would like to. Well, I've got something to tell you. I don't know if you had the chance to read his proposal, but believe it or not, I used to have really dark hair like Sasha until I read that proposal. Just to give you a little bit of an idea how scary that thing is. To tell you a little bit about myself, I am a county board supervisor in Kenosha County. My wife and I moved to Kenosha County in 2004. I ran for county board and was elected in 2008. I grew up in southern Illinois, very poor. My brother, my sister, my mom and I had sustained ourselves off government cheese. Eventually I started working in the restaurant industry, and I worked my way through college and went to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, with the help of Pell Grants. So I know the benefit of these social programs that Paul Ryan and the Republican Congress are trying to cut. So I know the value, I'm a product of them, I know they work, and I know that if those things weren't there for me, that I would not be here today in front of you, challenging somebody who's trying to cut these programs. So I would like to talk a little bit about his voucher, his coupon care, or I don't know what people want to call it, voucher care, coupon care. It would literally end Medicare as we know it. It would take away the ability for seniors to live worry-free once they reach that retirement age. And then I consider this more or less just a gift to the insurance industry, which we know has been fraught with inefficiencies, that has raised their rates over 300% in the past 10 years. And now he wants to give them another 20 million enrollees, where they can give them a voucher for inadequate insurance and then milk the last bit of savings these people have in their retirement for either additional insurance or for procedures that aren't covered under what they want to provide. And that's just wrong. And at the same time, he proposes in his budget giving tax breaks, more tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country. And then wants to balance the budget on the backs of those who have the least. Well, I think there's a better way to do this. And it starts with defending and improving Medicare, not ending it. And I don't want to give you the wrong idea. I mean, Paul Ryan wants government. He believes in a government that works. He believes in Medicare that works. He just believes in a government and a Medicare that works for big business, not for you and I. Yeah. I wish I had more information to pass out to you all here tonight. The campaign has just gotten started, as Sasha has told you. But I will be back at these meetings, and I will have more information for you as time goes by. I just wanted to have tonight to introduce myself to you and let you slow down, just to give you an opportunity to get to know me, and I'll be back at these meetings in the future.
Do you have a website?
I do have a website. It's my name, robzerban.com. You might have also seen another one called Hands Off My Grandma. So you visit the sites. I'm also on Facebook if you'd like to get updates on what's going on with the campaign. And it's a real pleasure being here. I'm looking forward to the challenge of beating Paul Ryan in the next election and serving as Congressman. Thank you.
Last week at my union meeting, I was informed, and I don't know if it's rumor or whatever, but are you aware of this, and can you comment on this, that Congressman Ryan was a guest at the Rancho Mirage estate for David Cook and his wife Julia in January?
I know he did go to a Coke event in California. I don't know if that's the one you're referring to, but I did know he had participated in one.
Okay, thank you.
One more question. Question for Rob? All right, I'm sure you'll be back.
Turn it up.
I'm sure you'll be back. Let me tell you one other piece of Rob's story that he was very modest about. He went to the Culinary Institute of America. He worked in the restaurant industry, but then he built a business. And he built a business that served 5,000 meals a day in food service. And he sold it for more money than I've got. And what's important about that is the idea that Democrats, we know we can stand for small business. Here's someone who specifically can say it was government cheese programs. It was the Pell Grant. And it got him to the place not only of succeeding in life, but succeeding in business. So he could become a taxpayer, being someone who grows the economy. And that's why Rob Zerban is the great example that we need to defeat the Paul Ryan vision of a Stark America. So thank you. There's still some fights up there, right? And I know that people's attentions really have turned to the recall campaigns. Of the 6 or the 8 Republicans that we've targeted, the state has now filed recall petitions on 5 of them, including Senator Alberta Darling. And we're going to win. We're going to win. And we're still fighting to see if we can get a result where the voters can be heard in the Supreme Court race. And so we invited our attorney, Democratic Party of Milwaukee County's attorney, who's an expert in election law and someone who's working on the recall campaigns. And that's Jeremy Levinson, to come up and give us an update just on the process so we understand what the next steps are in both the recalls and the recount. And then if we have any questions about that, we want to make sure we're all talking from the same playbook. So Jeremy, come on up. Thanks for your He says I have to read his text, but I don't know my phone.
I was a pretty good text. Hi, my name is Jeremy Levinson. I'm an active, long-time Democrat. I love being called soft-spoken. It doesn't happen very often. My name is Jeremy Levinson. I'm a long-time active Democrat. I'm a lawyer, and often those two paths cross, and I do end up doing a lot of political law. And I'm pretty tired at this point. It's been a very, very exciting months at this point. And I think 2 of the things that are going on are the Senate recalls and also the recount in the Supreme Court race. Just for full disclosure, I represent the Democratic senators, state senators, with respect to the recalls. So I've got a dog in that fight in a very literal way. On the recount, I have no direct involvement in it, although I'm up on those issues. Not in as great detail, but nonetheless. So why don't I start with the recount? As I think folks know, it was a agonizingly close election when we all went to bed that Tuesday night. Some of us got up nice and early to watch the needle bounce back and forth and bounce back and forth. And then all of a sudden, the strangest bit of news came out that something had happened in Waukesha. And it's still not quite clear to me what. But suffice it to say, where everything shook out, in a statewide race, approximately, what, 1.5 million votes cast? Some of you have a better number than me, but somewhere around 1.5 million votes cast. A spread between the candidates of 0.48%. It's minuscule. It is statistically improbable, and from an election standpoint, it's a bit of a nightmare. So the The statute that covers recounts already reflects the fact that the legislature has for years deemed that margin, anything under 0.5%, so deserving of further scrutiny that it provides for a full recount at no cost to the candidate. If the divide is greater, if there's a bigger spread, there is some cost and ultimately actual cost to a candidate to discourage people from asking for recounts for no reason. But this election was so close that it fell right in the legislature's judgment that it was sort of a tier 1 kind of situation, warranting a free total recount. Now, that would be true even if this election didn't turn out as weird as it did. Just because, as you folks know, around the state of Wisconsin, there are hundreds upon hundreds of voting locations, and a lot of very precise things have to happen very quickly on election night. And folks, for the most part, the people out there doing this do the best they can, but human error is inevitable, and at this margin might make the difference. That's back before things get weird. Well, what else do we know about this election? Is there are several very murky, very serious sets of unanswered questions. The best and the most dramatic one being what happened in Waukesha, why did it happen? And does it mean anything towards an election that should be decided by the will of the people who cast votes that night? So that is unfolding now. By law, the recount has to be done by May 9th. I have it on good information that the one thing, the executive director of the Government Accountability Board is overseeing this. He loves his job. And he would say for years, I love my job. I just never, ever want to have to live through a statewide recount. And I said, well, but wait, there's more. You're living through a wave of recall movements, the likes of which have never been seen in this country. That is not, I mean, I realize I'm a lawyer, so I am genetically prone to overstatement. But the reality is, what is happening on these recall petition drives has never been done in this country, even in crazy places like California, where they have a slightly different approach to the ballot box. Where those are at now, the recounts, and I will not bore you folks with the procedure for getting it done, but suffice to say, recall, sorry, you will notice I use recall and recount interchangeably. Just reflects what I've been doing for the past couple of weeks. Committee files to take out papers, they then have 60 days to get the sufficient number of signatures. If I'm correct, the formula is something like 25% for each district, 25% of the number of votes cast in that district in the last gubernatorial race. You would know if that's right, is that right?
That's right. It is right.
Wow, pretty good at this, thank you. And then people fan out. Let me just tell you a couple basic things, because I don't gush often, but allow me to gush right now. I've never been prouder to be a Democrat when I saw the depth of organization. I mean, this is an enormous effort, thousands of people involved, a lot of tricky rules to play by, a lot of people to train, a lot of people to keep on track, a lot of information that has to get to the right place at the right time in the right form. I have never been prouder of the organization I have seen these people create, deploy, and make work. It has been amazing. I will even admit to moments where I felt less than entirely useful. Why aren't they calling the lawyers? They seem to know what they're doing. But wait, there's more, because as we've seen ever since, when was Scott Walker sworn in? January 3rd. January 3rd. We have seen something else that, at least in my adult life, we haven't seen, which is the other side, day by day by day, can't appear to tie their shoes properly. And we have been reaping the benefit of that as well. We have turned in, to date, let's see, we have turned in our petitions to recall Pankey, Hopper, Darling, Harsdorf, Luther Olson. Am I missing one? Okay. we are turning in something like 125, 130, 135% of the signatures we actually need. And that's the kind of organization we have. Every indication is that those signatures are incredibly high quality. Because there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be typos. There's always going to be lack of documentation. We have now seen challenges. The other side gets to challenge our signatures. They are not even bothering to challenge whether we got enough signatures in the first two, because it is so obvious we got many thousands more. Now, on the other side of things, they've started to file their recall petitions, and it's a much more target-rich environment. This may come as a surprise to some folks, but it doesn't appear that the other party has the grassroots support out on the ground in all corners of this state that our party does. So they've had to hire people. And the only reason these folks are in Wisconsin, the only reason these folks are trying to get signatures is because they are being paid to do so. Which, look, everyone's got to make a living. The problem is, you take people who aren't committed to the larger goal, have no stake in the larger goal, because they don't live here, and we see that come through in problems that permeate these petitions. And we don't know exactly whether they're going to make it over the line or not yet, but they're keeping us pretty busy because we keep finding problems and pursuing these problems. The call went out in Madison last week. We need folks to help do data entry. My understanding is there was about 110 people crammed into the Democratic Party headquarters. Bring your own laptop. People showed up. My understanding is people had to be turned away because there literally wasn't space for them. That is pretty amazing. So everyone is feeling very good about the recall efforts. But of course, I'll conclude with this. It will all do some good in terms of reminding us the power we have, just to the point we've gotten to at this point today. But there is one thing at this point that can stand between the people of Wisconsin and the full-on Scott Walker agenda. Right now, he owns both houses of the legislature, which have ceased to function because he don't do anything Scott Walker wants. There is one thing and only one thing we can do to even interrupt having his agenda cram down this state's throat, which is take back the Senate. It's the only thing. And it is this simple. We win we flip at least 3 of those seats, and the Walker agenda, Walker playbook is out the window. Because the Walker playbook is premised on not having a check or a balance. And suddenly the Senate would start serving as a check and balance once again. And that's what it's all about.
Couple questions? Anybody else got a question? More questions back here?
I'm following issues real close for the recalls, and there's just, the Republicans brought up that the person who filed for the recall in Penke's district wasn't the same person that did something else having to do with it. Is that a valid complaint on their part? Is that going to go anywhere?
No.
Oh, okay.
And basically they're making the same argument in Hopper's case too. Yeah. There's a couple of different ways to look at it, most of which are boring and lawyerly. It's a nonsense argument. The best response I can probably give you, if they're right, they've just killed all of their own recall committees too. It's not, they went to law school, they say anything can be argued. But you should always go to day 2 of law school, which is not everything should be argued. That's what that is about. Because you asked a question that is right in the heartland of what I'm doing. It was fun to respond. That's the technical term. When I'm not standing in front of a microphone, I have more colorful terms.
Giving shots at the vote?
At least that's more fun. Anything else?
Yeah, are they trying to steal the Supreme Court race? And is the thing in Waukesha, is that just a red herring with the 700 votes or 7,000 votes and there's really stuff going on if that's just a distraction from?
As I said, I have not worked with, Joanne Kloppenberg's campaign, nor have I been very close to those issues. All I can do is give you my own personal sort of guess. And based on my experience, I think what we're likely to see is that Waukesha was an instance of one self-important, fairly minor official who thought she knew better. And so she did a bunch of strange things, like took the entire vote return system, put it on a standalone computer in her office. And then, in the name of security, in the name of election security, and then she screwed up and forgot to add in the city of Brookfield. You folks might have heard of the city of Brookfield. I think my guess is it's going to turn out that it was simply that kind of grandiose self-importance and malfeasance rather than an attempt to steal the election. That's my guess. I don't know what's going to happen with the recount. It's so close.
What does that say then? What does that say then when they talk about previous years when voter turnout was like 97 and 98%, because they were putting that together with that too, implying that there was something going on?
Well, you have to remember the Republican definition of voter fraud is a higher than normal turnout in a population with a lot of Democrats. That is why the hue and the cry about voter fraud has been about Milwaukee. Doesn't matter how many law enforcement types say there is no meaningful or systematic voter fraud here, never has been. I'm going to respectfully suggest that if nothing else, it would be nice to have something tamp down the Republicans' willingness to scream fraud every time a population they don't like votes. Now, if it does tamp it down, that'll last about 5 minutes, but I think there's a lot of people out there seeing the irony in this, because we've never had anything like this in Milwaukee.
One more question, please.
Hi, Jeremy. Can you tell us what is being done on the defensive side for our senators that are being up against recalls? Are you involved in that at all, other than watching their organization fall apart?
Well, the folks who are crunching the data, the 108 people at the party, are going page by page by page through the Republicans' petitions against our votes and flagging problems. We've got researchers researching potential problems. These days I'm getting a dozen to 20 calls a day. We found this in the Republicans' petitions, which, does that undermine, so that is actually, the furious activity right now is on the defensive side. The offensive side, most of the petitions are in, with the exception of Cowles, Lasich, and Grover. So the bulk of our petitions are in, and on that side, all that's left to do is for me to deal with arguments like the one we just discussed. On the defensive side, we are putting their petitions through the ringer, not because we're afraid of a potential recall election, but because we want to make sure they genuinely represent what they're supposed to, which is a sufficient number of qualified electors from the appropriate district knowingly asking for a recall election. So we have hundreds of people hard at work making sure that they don't get away with turning in something that falls below that standard. Does that answer your question?
Which senators have they turned in their petitions?
Which senators? Wirch, Hansen, Holbrin. They turned in Taylor?
They turned in Taylor, so they didn't have enough.
I was going to say.
Well, they hit their deadline. They hit their deadline on Taylor.
Okay, so that, if they don't have enough signatures, they hit their deadline, that's done. That's over. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Jeremy.